The early 1960s was a time which culture and people started changing by breaking free from traditional ways. Family life changed significantly, while nonconformists left their traditional home life to rebel against authority. These nonconformists influenced both a social, art, political, and music revolution. A decade earlier, in the 1950s, many, mainly white, middle-class families started migrating away from bustling city centers and settling into quiet suburban areas. This move, commonly called white flight, was a result of lower tax rates on housing, as well as better conditions of living found in suburban areas. In the 60s, a typical middle-class family made around $3,000 to $10,000 a year, while the father of the family was usually the sole provider.
Men of this day and age worked commonly in construction, business, or sales. Women were expected to stay home, cook meals, tend to children, and were given little opportunity in the workplace compared to their male counterparts. Children spent numerous hours at school studying or playing in their free time. They also helped with chores around the house. Religion was also an important aspect of American culture. Nearly 60% of Americans in the year 1960 were of the Protestant religion. Children were taught by their elders specific religious and life values and ideas, as well as what their proper role in society should be.
However, some members of society did not believe in some of these values and chose to explore new horizons by leaving their suburban lives and moving to communes. These nonconformists, or informally called hippies, believed in self-expression and equal opportunities, were essential parts of the society. People lived peacefully on these communes where they believed in social unity and freedom. However, communes were usually associated with individuals who were common drug users and those who believed in free love by having multiple sexual partners. Hippies were anti-war, pro-civil rights, and anti-imperialist.
At this time, the U.S. was still sending troops to fight in the Vietnam War. Many citizens believed that the U.S. had only gotten involved to stop Vietnam from turning communist, and did not realize that thousands of U.S. troops, as well as innocent Vietnamese bystanders, would die and suffer as a result of the war.
To protest the war and express their ideas, nonconformists voiced their opinions through protests. Many of these protests occurred on college campuses. College students began to form organizations in which a group of people would protest for days or even weeks at a time. One of the most well-known student-run protest organizations was called the Students for Democratic Society, or SDS. However, these protests weren't always peaceful and often resulted in violent riots or instances where police even ended up shooting at protesters. An example of this would be the Kent State shooting in the early 1970s. Not only were riots occurring in America, but students and individuals in Europe, such as France, were angered also by the war and government.
Make love, not war. Make love, not war. Vietnam!
Nonconformists also affected the expansion of the drug culture. What started off as recreational use or experimentation resulted in addiction as well as deaths, some even among popular musicians or rock and roll artists who influence music today, most notably Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. The 1960s were a time in which many groups of people decided to break away from what seemed socially proper and begin to stand up for what ideas they believed in. The many events as well as culture which arose during the 60s still influence America today.
Many conformists did not quite understand or agree with the nonconformist crowd. Here's some rare footage of a nonconformist powwow.
Mother Nature, you bring us joy, joy. We break you, but we love you. Mother Nature, we are your soul, we love you. Till the end of time.
Starring
Dun da da da!
Chloe Posderick as Dad and Burnout Hippie, Katie Hahn as Meditating Hippie and Young Boy, Kate Pavlonis as Yoga Hippie and Young Daughter, Last and certainly least, Emma Homan as mother and warrior hippie.